Hey guys, I'm Jordy, and this is your guide to the water spirit corrupted by the Shaw of Fear's influence and the second to last boss of Terrace of the Endless Spring, Lei Shi.
What are you doing here? Go away!
Now, Lei Shi is probably the easiest fight in Terrace, but there are a few mechanics that aren't necessarily obvious, so listen up when I go over Scary Fog and Protect, especially as they're likely the reason that you're wiping to her. Okay, first, Lei Shi is a single phase fight, kind of. She will do a bunch of different things depending on time from pull and her percent HP, so you won't always get the mechanic that you're expecting, but just know how to deal with each and you'll be golden. As far as raid comp, this is your standard 2 tank 5 healer fight. More healers aren't really going to help you much here, and any more than 2 tanks is overkill, so we go with the minimum or even fewer healers if we're feeling spicy and send it from there. Alright, so first let's talk about Scary Fog, the heroic only mechanic. On pull, Lei Shi throws up a big circle of clouds around her. Anyone standing outside of the cloud gets a stack of Scary Fog every 9 seconds or so. This increases the damage anyone within the small circle around the player is in by 10% per stack, as well as builds a dot on that player that ticks for about 7k damage a second. So, you could feasibly just ignore this mechanic entirely if you want, but what I'd recommend you do is actually have 3 players stand outside of the circle building stacks over time until one of them hits about 10 stacks. Once they have, that player then moves in toward the raid and stacks with the rest of the group. While this does mean that the raid is taking about 100% more damage, what it also means is Lei Shi herself is also taking 100% more damage. And because the raid isn't taking any damage at this point, it really only matters that we're debuffing Lei Shi. Just be careful not to be close enough to the tanks that you overlap them. You don't want them to be taking any extra damage. Once that person has maintained the damage taking debuff on her for 30 seconds or so, they should wait for their debuff to fall off, move out of the circle to begin stacking again, and then your second stack person should move in and maintain their new debuff on the boss. This cycle repeats over and over again, with a new player coming in while the other 2 stack, resetting so as not to stack too high, but also making sure that their stacks are big enough to keep a strong debuff up. There's also a lot of things you can do to min-max this without these players dying. Just know, anything over 5 stacks, they start taking pretty beefy ticks from the Scary Fog, but at the same time are also super valuable to keep alive in that they effectively double or more the raid's damage. Okay, that's Scary Fog. There is one more mechanic in here that kind of affects the timing of it, so we'll talk about that when we get there. Now, the rest of the fight. Lei Shi and every mechanic and ad in this fight all do spell damage. There is no physical damage whatsoever here, so Devotion Aura from all of your paladins are fully effective. As far as her auto attack, she'll throw small geysers under her current target that splashes water around the tank with the ability Spray. Now this is a small radius, so your second tank will be looking to be one tip of a triangle around her, while your main tank is at another and the raid behind her making up the third. Doing this means that she won't hit both tanks at the same time. Now, for each hit of this geyser, she applies the debuff Spray, increasing frost damage taken by 10%. Tanks, what this means is you'll want to get to 10 to 15 stacks and then taunt off the other tank so as their damage taken doesn't grow to unhealable levels. Complicating this a bit is that for every percent her HP goes down, she casts 8 to 10% faster. Now, unless my math ain't mathing here, this tooltip doesn't really make a lot of sense given the following cast times in the logs. It's more looking like 8 to 10% faster for every 10% health lost. Either way, she increases her damage over time, so we opt to wait to pop Lust until the final 20% of the fight to give the raid a better shot at getting through her onslaught of damage. And tanks and healers need to make sure that those tanks survive with big cooldowns towards the end of the encounter. Okay, there are 3 other things to concern you on this fight, 2 of which happen on a single timer that happens about 30 seconds in and 50 seconds or so thereafter that she'll generally go back and forth with, unless interrupted by an HP trigger that we'll discuss in a sec. Okay, the first of these 2 mechanics, Hide. Lei Shi will vanish and become invisible before teleporting somewhere in the room. From here, she'll throw AoE damage at players, and fast. So the second you see her go invisible, spread out quickly to avoid any damage from hitting multiple players. Now the goal here is to cast AoE spells and find Lei Shi. You can see here that water's falling off of her as we attack, so this is where she is. We do enough AoE damage to break her out of her invisibility, and she'll reappear, continuing the fight normally. Now one thing to mention here, while she's invisible, it's not possible to gain stacks of Scary Fog. So, you need to move quickly to find her, as you don't want to lose your built up stacks from those players and miss out on all that extra damage. And Scary Fog people, once the raid has found her, you want to be sure that you're more than 30 yards away from her, as the very second she comes out of invisibility, a stack will apply, and another won't go out for another 9 seconds. And it is possible yours can fall off if you miss that first stack, so get away from where the raid has discovered her and maintain it. Also, a fun little trick here is Battle Horn will break her out of her invisibility. Here's me getting mine from this NPC outside of Stormstout.
Sorry, Layler. Are you really trying to do this? Fuck you, dude. You're trying to taunt him off? Go fuck yourself, piece of shit. I have taunt too, motherfucker! Trying to steal my mob. Eat a dick. Someone tries to be a dick to me like that, I will be toxic back. That guy just taunted so that he could try to pull it off me. He wasn't here when it spawned, so sucks to be you. I hope it drops and I get to laugh at you. It fucking did. Fuck you.
Okay, sorry about the fucking profanity. Once she's broken out, tanks work to move her safely back to the middle of the room, and the raid works carefully not to be around where the tanks are on this. They're taking damage from spray, and you can't afford to splash it. Now that's one half of the special abilities. The other is called Getaway. Lei Shi decides it's time to send you to the drink off the side and pushes the raid with a big gust of energy away from her. Players take about 100,000 shadow damage a second, but if you're actively running toward Lei Shi and fighting the current, you will take half of that. Now she won't break this channel unless you do 4% of her HP and damage during the channel, so while you're running toward her, blast her with as many instant cast spells, melee attacks, anything to push her the 4% necessary to break the channel and end it. Some great raid cooldowns here are Stampeding Roar to help with the movement, Devotion Aura, Revival, Rallying Cry, Powered Barrier if the raid is close to her, even Spearwalker's Grace on Druids using Tranquility, and Symbiosis. Yes, that old chestnut. So do what you can to keep the raid up, blast her, and then back we go to position 1. Alright, truly, this fight is just about done. The last mechanic, and maybe the most dangerous on this fight, Protect. At 80, 60, 40, and 20%, Lei Shi will call for some 5 to 6 of her best friends to appear and go immune. Now you might have thought Lei Shi was scary, but these guys are truly no joke. They melee for about 750,000 damage each, and even for your tanks, this isn't survivable outside of big cooldowns, but they are completely CCable by anything that works on elementals. Fears, bind elemental, stuns, paralyze, lots of stuff. The goal here is to kill one single elemental, and once that's done, the rest will give up and despawn. Now while the elementals are up, Lei Shi is still fully active, except she's invincible. So once they spawn, CC as many as you can, mark a target with Skull, and blast it while your tanks roll big cooldowns and tank it and Lei Shi. Now it's super easy to get one shot by these guys. Do not cleave as they're being CC'd, because you might break any sensitive crowd controls and all of that damage is useless anyways. Just hit the marked target, kill it fast, and then continue. And like I said, once she hits 20% and that fourth and last Protect goes out, she's super dangerous with her Afraid buff and the elemental's up, so we pop Lust here, blast the elemental, then Lei Shi, and then break her corruption. Great job, gamers. Now she'll lend a hand during the fight against the next and final boss of Phase 1 of Mists of Pandaria, the Shaw of Fear. Alright, let's talk tank tips. Remember, this fight is entirely spell damage, so plan ahead with Monk's Diffuse Magic, Warrior Spell Reflect, DK AMS, and the like. Her attacks hit very fast, sub 40%, so plan to have a cooldown up every time you're tanking. Also, when the elementals are up, you'll likely get destroyed if you're tanking more than one, so do your best to help out with any CCs as they spawn. Then, pop a big cooldown to survive those melees. Stuns also work great here to reduce that incoming damage, and for the monks, Zen Med works for 5 of her sprays, as it's not a melee, so it won't break it. Super handy and very good DR value. Last thing, watch your other tank's stacks closely and make sure that yours have fallen off, then taunt. Letting the damage taken debuff stack up too high will ensure that the other tank dies, so watch it and be careful. And for the healers, this isn't too bad a fight for us, as it's mostly up to the tanks and DPS to pop their cooldowns to survive the dangerous moments. If anybody gets meleeed by a protector, well, that's kind of on them or the CCers not doing their job, and the tanks need to watch their own stacks. What is on us, however, is making sure we're dumping heals into them as their stacks grow higher. Early on, once they've taunted, the damage isn't too bad, but anything over 8 or 10 stacks will be significant, so big single target heals and cooldowns on them helps quite a bit. And for the DPS, plan ahead where your area of responsibility is for CCs on the protectors. Paralyze, Fear, Bind Elemental, Stuns, Binding Shot. Use all of the tools at your disposal to keep them locked down, then blast the marked target as soon as possible to get out of the protect transition and back on the boss. And for the Scary Fog Soakers, when your stacks get over 10, you'll be taking a pretty good amount of damage, so pop defensives to help the healers out. They've got their hands full with tank healing. Things like Deterrence, Dark Bargain, Greater Invis, Dispersion, whatever it takes to survive, as you dying really reduces the damage output of the raid because of your stacks, so don't. And that's it for Lei Shi. Next up, the final boss of Phase 1 of MOP, and let me tell you, it's quite the epic fight. Complete with dancing, Dragon Ball Z style damage buffs, and an endless watery dream state. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really does mean a lot, and I am super grateful. We are almost at 40k subs, and it would be incredible to hit that number ahead of Throne. Thank you so much. And that's it for me. Thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.